Right, you're welcome again to our class. This is the second class in our second week of our Microsoft Power BI training. And my name is Benga. And in case you have not subscribed, I would say please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And my handle is at Master Data with Dave. And what we're looking at today is relationships and data model concepts. Relationships and data model concepts. So today we're talking about relationships and data modeling. So far, we've been talking about, trying to import a table and then working with that particular table. What if in real life you have more than one table? You have 2, 3, 4, 7, 20 tables, and you want these tables to communicate amongst each other. For example, you work in an organization and you deal with customer table, you have the sales table, or customer data, sales data, products data, supplier, HR, staff, a lot of tables. I want these tables or some of them to be able to relate with each other. That is why we have the opportunity to create relationships amongst tables. And on the Power BI desktop, you have different views. And the first one we have is a report view. That's towards the left hand side of my screen. You can see the report view. The next one to it is the table view. And then the next one to it is the model view. So it is under this model view that you can create relationships. For example, we have the customer table, the product table, and the sales table. And we want these tables to relate with each other so that we'll be able to create visuals based on these three tables, not just in isolation, not just getting visuals from just a sales table. And then if you need something from the customers table, you have to create from the customers table. If these tables can communicate with each other, you can create one visual that will take different fields from different tables. That means you can have the customer ID field from the customer table and have the sales from the sales table. And you're using this just one visual to see these two fields, depending on the visual you are using. So if there is no relationship between the two tables, they will not be able to communicate. That means when you choose this field and you choose the other field, it will tell you, there's an error. They cannot communicate. So how do you want me to visualize this? So you need to create that relationship first before you can be able to create visuals with them. Okay, and then we have different types of relationships, and I've mentioned that the relationship define how data in different tables connect, and it allows you to analyze data across multiple tables without combining them into one. That means you don't have to merge the tables or append the tables before you can make them to communicate or to connect to each other. And that is the benefit of relationships. And what are the types of relationships that we have? And remember, when we're talking about relationship, we're talking about how can these tables communicate within each other. So we have the one-to-many relationship, we have to many-to-one relationship, and then we have the many-to-many relationship. So we're talking about the one-to-many. That means there's one field, or let's say one field in this table has many or multiple fields in the other table. For example, you have the customer table, and then you have the sales table. That means one customer can have different entries in the sales table. One customer can have different entries in the sales table. That means I am a customer to, for example, Facebook. And today I am, purchasing an item, or I'm doing a marketing campaign on my Facebook account. And then tomorrow I come back, I'm doing another campaign on my Facebook account. So that means I have an entry dated yesterday in the sales table, if they have something like that. And then again, I have another entry dated today because I did another transaction. So that is one to many. And the other one, which is many to one, is just like a one to many relationship, but the Power BI is interpreting it the other way around. Instead of saying many to one, it is interpreting it as a one to many. So that means many fields in this table belongs to just one person. That means a staff in one table, in the staff table, can have multiple entries when you talk about the benefits table. That means in the benefits, a staff can be entitled to a lot of benefits. So it can be maybe say car loan, child loan, equipment loan, whatever it is in that benefits table. A staff can be entitled to more than one, entry in that table. So it's just like the reverse of the one to many. And then when we talk about the many to many, this is it's very technical and it's not usually used because you need to be very sure that you understand the complexities before you be able to use a many to many relationship in your, in your data model. So it is usually advisable just use either the one to many or the many to one. And it's just because it requires a lot of technicalities, and it may bring once you are visualizing, the results may not be exactly what you want. So you may want to simplify your data model if you're not too sure. And then for you to create a model, or for you to create a relationship in your, you know, Power BI desktop, you need to understand primary key and foreign key. And what is a primary key? A primary key is a unique identifier in a table. Now, what do we mean by unique identifier? For those in Nigeria, we have what is called BVN, bank verification number. So that means if you go to a bank and you say, I want to open a bank account, they will ask you, do you have a BVN, bank verification number? And that number, all things being equal, is unique to each individual. That means one customer can only have one BVN, bank verification number. The same thing as in the US, you have social security number. In the UK, you have whatever they call it, national insurance number. So it is unique to each individual, all things being equal, because of course it's a system and there can be errors. But all things being equal, one customer should have only one bank verification number. One customer should only have one social security number. And that identifies that customer. So that means if you enter a bank and you say you want to check your account and you're not sure which account it is, and they ask you for your BVN, once they input it in the system, it should bring out your details because that belongs only to you. So we call that a primary key. Something that is unique in that table is a primary key. Another example I can use is if you have a sales table, the sales ID is always unique. Or for example, transaction ID, it's always unique for each transaction. So it cannot be duplicated. Once you have a transaction ID, you put it on the system, it brings out just one transaction. So that's a primary key. It is unique in that table. That means, of course, a primary key in this table may not be a primary key in another table. So we're talking about specifics now. In this particular table, this column contains only unique values. And of course, in Power BI, you can check to see how healthy your data is. You can see which field actually contain unique values. You can check, when you go to, we'll get there, in our future lessons. Now, a foreign key. Remember, we have discussed a primary key. It is unique to that particular table. That means that column contains only unique values. Now, a primary key is that's the primary key. Sorry, a foreign key now is a primary key in another table. Okay, if I can just get my data loaded so that I can illustrate that. Just loading that. Load. Then I want to load another one. Because if you don't understand these basics, it will affect, when we are trying to create relationships between our tables. So we must understand the basics, we must understand the rudiments before we can delve into creating relationships between our tables. Okay, so I can come to the report view, which is where I am, or I can come to the table view. So if I click on the table view, let me see my data as a table. Now, if you look at the first one here, I have product ID, product name, category, and price. So I can rename that as product table or just product. That's double click and then you change the name. If I click on the second one, I have customer ID, customer name, country. So I can rename that as customer. So I double click on it. I rename it as customer and then I press enter. Okay, so let's look closely at this table. The customer ID is unique. That means you cannot have two posts in this table because it is customer ID. It is unique to each customer. So you have customer ID, you have customer name, you have country. If you click on the second table, you have product ID, you have product name, you have category, you have price, right? So if I load my third table and I click on the sales, and then you can preview it before loading, then I can double click and change it to sales because I'm sure it is sales, right? So I have sales, I have product, I have customer. So if I go to the table view and if I click on the sales table, I can see that I have sales ID, I have customer ID, I have product ID in the sales table. Now, in this sales table, which field is unique to each sales? It is the sales ID. The sales ID is unique. That means you cannot have a customer with the same sales ID because the sales table, is always increasing. You keep having sales each day or each, at intervals. You keep having sales. But if you come to the product table, you have product ID. It is unique to this table. But if you look closely at the sales table, you also have product ID as a field. But in the sales table, it is not unique because you can buy more than one product. That means I can buy, for example, I buy a face cleanser today, and I can come back tomorrow and buy the same product face cleanser, but with different dates, with different sales ID, with different transaction ID. So that means what is unique in this sales table is the sales ID. The customer ID is not unique. The product ID is not unique because I can have more than one customer buying different products. So that means in this sales table, the primary key is the sales ID, unique to the table. The customer ID is not unique to this table, but it is a foreign key compared to the customer table. Because in the customer table, you can link the customer table and the sales table with the customer ID column. Right. So I'll come back to the model view so that we can see it, see it better. Right. Let me make this bigger. Now we have three tables. Let me delete the relationship that I have, and then let me delete this relationship. So we can have a glance at the tables that we have. We have product table, customer table, and sales table. If you look at it very well, product table has just category, price, product ID, and product name. Customer table has country, customer ID, and then customer name. Whereas the sales table has customer ID, product ID, quantity, sale date, sales ID, and total sales. So if I want to, you can move this around if you want. If I want to, link these three tables, if I look at the customer table and the sales table, what do I think is common between them? It looks like it's the customer ID. I have customer ID in customer, I have customer ID in sales. So that means I should be able to link these two tables on this with this field. So if I choose customer ID and I choose customer ID, in the customer table, the customer ID field is a primary key. Whereas in the sales table, the customer ID is a foreign key. So that means customer ID in the customer table is a primary key. Very unique, very important to that customer table. Whereas for the sales table, it is a foreign key. Look at the product table as well. You have product ID, you have sales ID. You should be able to link these two tables with these two fields. On the product table, the product ID is a primary key because it is unique to the table and it is very important to that table and it is in the table, so it is primary key. Whereas in the sales table, it is a foreign key. Foreign, that means it is not domiciled in that table. Like that uniqueness is not domiciled in that table. It is from another table. So it is unique to the product table, but it may not be necessarily unique in the sales table. Just quickly, I'll mention some very few benefits of relationships in data model. One of the benefits is that it enables you to you know analyze tables. That's cross table analysis. Between two or more tables, you can do analysis. And then it keeps your data normalized and structured. At least you know that your product table is there, your sales table is there. I don't have to combine them. I can create relationships between them. And then I don't have to say I want to merge all my tables together because I just want to maybe view sales by dates or sales by customer. I can keep the tables separate, whereas I can create a relationship between them. Right. So let's move on to how can we actually create this relationship. As I've mentioned before, looking at the product and the sales table, you can see that the product ID is there. The product ID is also in the sales table. You have product ID in product table. You have product ID in the sales table. So let's try and create this relationship between these two tables. How do you do that? You click on the product ID, click and drag it. You can drag it around as if it's traveling, move it around, and then drop it on the second field. And the good thing about Power BI is that it can understand what you are doing. So now, because I have clicked and dropped it on it, it quickly tries to analyze what you have done. And then it can say, okay, I think what you are trying to do is a one-to-many relationship. And of course, that is what I want to do. And most times or often, Power BI is correct. But if it is not correct, you know what you want to do, you should be able to modify it. But in this case, it is very correct. So what will I do? I'll just click save. It is one to many. We can see the cardinality, one to many, and then the cross filter direction is single. That is fine. And then I want to make this relationship active. Yes, that is fine. So I really did not have to change anything. Just click save. But in advanced analysis, you may have to change things, or in real life, in real life, you may have to change some things, some of the settings. Okay, for the customer table and the sales table, I'm clicking on the customer ID, dragging it and dropping it in the sales ID. The same thing, one-to-many relationship, single cross-filter direction, and then I want this relationship to be active. And then I click save. So now I have one-to-many, I have one-to-many. You can see the arrow, the direction. That's how we read it. Because it's going this way, so we read as one-to-many. This one is not in this way, it's the other way around. So it is one-to-many. The many is a star. Okay. Right. So when we import our tables in Power BI, Power BI has some automated functions. So it will check all your tables and just preempt and say, okay, this table should be able to communicate using these fields and automatically to create some of those fields. That was why when I imported my three tables, I met these relationships like this because Power BI had already created them. It's a simple table, product ID, they should be able to communicate and then it created it. And that is fine. Right. I want us to do something. Let's delete these relationships. Yes. Delete this relationship. Yes. Then go back to the report view. Then click a table. The table visual. Let's create a table visual, make it big. Then you can try and, you know, expand all. Expand all the fields and let's take it one by one. I want the sales ID in the table. I want the quantity and I want the product name and I want the customer name. We can see it's telling me that there's no relationship. How will I know which customer has bought an item? Because there's no relationship between these tables. Please help me fix this. Right. So we'll go back to our model view. I click on the model view. Then I come to products and I click products, drop it on the products, click save. Then I click on the customer ID, drop it on the customer ID in the sales table because it's fine, one-to-one, make this relationship active and it's single. Then I click save. So I have an active, or I have active relationships between these tables now. So let's go back to our table, report view, and then now we can see. If you are not sure, let's delete that again and do the same thing again. I'll put the sales ID, I put the quantity, I'll put the product name, and then I'll put the customer name. I can even put the country. So we can see that the customer from table customer and the sales from the sales table, they are able to communicate. If you want to be very sure, you can put the customer ID beside, so that you have all the fields in the customer table. Then come to the sales table, put the customer ID after the custom count of the sales ID. And then you can actually confirm customer ID in the sales table is 11. Customer ID in the customer ID in the customer table is actually 11. Come to this one is 24, is 24. Is 27, is 27. So no matter which field you are picking it from, it is still the same thing. Why? Because there's an active relationship between the tables. Right. So far we've been able to create relationship between our tables, and of course, this is just basics introduction to it. You want to learn more, you need to just either read up online or attend an advanced class, or you can message me after now. You can learn about dimension tables, fact tables, cardinalities and the likes, and that will really help you. Right. Now we have active relationships on our table, so we can create more visuals. So I want to delete this table. At least the table has shown me that, yes, my relationships are working. So I can remove. So just click on the three dots and then click remove. And then I want to create a bar chart. Let's say a star column chart. Click on that and then make it bigger. And then I want the x-axis to be, I'm looking for total sales by country. So I want my x-axis to be customers, country. So I want my x-axis to be that. And then my y-axis to be sales, total sales, total sales. And that is it. Imagine I took one field from the sales table, I took another field from the customer table, and they are able to relate. And I have my visuals, and that is fine. Okay, that's the first one. The next one I want to do is a pie chart. I click on the pie chart and then I want it like this. And then I want category products as the legend. And then I want values to be total sales. Beautiful. Okay. I want a line chart to show trend over time. So I click on the line charts and then I resize it to what I want. Then x-axis, I want the sales dates. And then the y-axis, I want sum of sales. Um, let's say I want just the months and the day, just the months. So that's a trend, showing you trend, the analysis of the trend over time. And of course, remember I said you can always change this. If you don't want sum of total sale, you can just double click it and change it to total sale. And then you can format it the way you want it. Okay, then I want some card visuals. I want total sales. I want total quantity sold. And I want total customer. So you may want to use individual cards. Just your choice. Total sales. I just put total sales. Remember, you can format it. You can come and say, no, I want you to tell me exactly how many. So you can come to call out value. And then I don't want the display unit to be auto. I want it to be none so that everything is shown up to the decimal place. Okay, that's it. Then I don't want it to be sum of total sale. I want it to be total. I want total sales and I want space there. Enter. Oh, my T is gone away, so I can put the T again. Press enter. So that's total sales. Okay, I can copy and paste the visual so that I have a copy of it instead of changing that formatting again. Instead of starting again, I just copy my visual and paste it. Now, instead of total sale, I will remove the total sale and then I want the quantity sold. So I want the total quantity. So that's sum of quantity. If I don't want sum, I want just the quantity. I can delete the sum, press enter. And then I want another one, Control C, Control V. And what I want now is not quantity sold. What I want is the customer ID. And I want it counted. Now, what the count I want is a count distinct. That means don't double count customers for me. Let it be unique. If Mr. Femi has bought 5 items, just count him as one customer. So that's a count distinct. But if I want just the count, even if Mr. Femi has bought 700 items, he has visited 700 times, let it be 700. So that's the difference between count and count distinct. Count distinct gives you the unique counts, whereas counts only will give you even the duplicates. So I want the unique. So that's 42. And then I want to call it unique customers. Unique customers. And that is it. Right, to talk about the count distinct and the count function. Now, looking at our table on the table view, if I look at the sales table, looking at the customer ID, look at customer ID number 6. If I click on the drop down icon and I select just number 6, customer 6 add sales ID 7366. That's 5 different unique sales ID. But this is one customer. So how do I want to handle this kind of situation? Do I want the system to count it for me as 5, or I want it to count it as just one customer? So if I go back to my report view, if I select the unique counts, that means if I click on this place and then click on the drop down, this down arrow, and I choose count distinct, It's going to count that number, customer number six, as just one customer. But if I click on the count, it's going to count that customer number six as six, or sorry, as five different customers. So that's the difference between count and count distinct. You want to see each staff as just one, no matter the number of benefits they have, or just see them in multiples. So far, they have more than one benefit. Also, to help your understanding, if you come to the table view and you select a table, towards the lower left-hand side of the screen, you can see, the distribution. The table it has 50 rows and 50 distinct values for the colon customer name. If you click on the customer ID, the same thing, 50 distinct values. But if you click on the sales table and you click on the customer ID colon, it tells you that this table sales has 100 rows, but the customer ID colon has only 42 distinct values. That means that field is not unique. It's not the primary key. If you click on the sales ID colon, 100 rows, 100 distinct values. The same thing for the quantity. It is not distinct, only four distinct values. Right, so we want to create a measure that calculates total sales. So that means I come to the sales table, I click on new measure, and then I say, so we can see it. So I call it total sales equals to, and remember it is sum of what? If I click on the sum of what? Now, because our table has relationship, that's why you can see all our tables. And what I want is the sum of the total sale. So I can scroll. Sorry, so sales, sum, sales, total sales. So if I click on it and I close the bracket and I press enter, then if I come insert a card, and then I click on the total sales. So that's what I have. You can click the drop down arrow to remove it. 6721K, just like the total sales that we have. But of course, in case it's different, you can always modify that. Okay, and then we can have measure for total quantity, average sales, distinct products sold. If you want distinct products sold, how do you get that? Okay, let's come to the sales table, create a new measure, and then we call it this distinct products sold equals to. Now remember, we have count, we have distinct counts. So we are using distinct counts. And what are we counting? We are counting the product ID because it's in the sales table. And how do you know what has been sold? It is only through the product ID. Okay. So click on the sales product ID and then you close the table and then you click enter. So if you change this card visual, and you change it to the distinct products sold, that gives you 42. Right. Okay, so if I want to create another measure, I want to call it average AVG sales equals to average of what? Sales and then total sale. And I close that and I press enter. Okay, so I can copy my visual, paste my visual, then instead of average sales that I had before, I unselect that and I select the new one. So by the amount, it is, for me to know that, okay, it is by amount, I can come here and then choose the Naira, the dollar sign, and then I want it to be in two decimal places. So I know that yes, this is by the sale value, not by the quantity.